This is paper 4th, unit C, the next poem prescribed in your syllabus, students of AMI final, Night of the Scorpio. Now, when you study Nissim Askell, see, constantly it must be in your mind that what kind of questions put up in examination, what types of questions can we put up. For instance, you have 4 poems prescribed in your syllabus, but there is a lot of difference when you study at BA level and MA level. Here, you must have knowledge about Nissim Askell as a modern poet, as an Indian poet. Now, if you consult last year's papers, see, these kinds of questions were put up, and especially, Nissim Askell as an Indian poet and a modern poet, and Indianness. Yes, focus is also on Indian settings and Indianness. So, mind you that there is difference when you study, because this poem, it was prescribed at BA level also. And if somebody asks you what is the theme of this poem, I mean, conspicuous answer would be that, and which is really praiseworthy, and that's why it is one of the most celebrated poems, because it is focused on say ideal motherhood and self-effacing love. This must be the conspicuous answer. But when you study at AMI level, we have multi-dimensional aspects of the poet. And you must have also idea about the dramatic effect of this poem. Since Nissim Askell, he has a special bent of mind, his area of interest in theatrical skills, and see, he was director of theater unit Bombay, and and he conducted courses on arts, and I mean, in when we discussed his biographical sketch, we covered these points, so you must remember all that, and in this context, we must delve deep into various points regarding Nissim Askell as a modern poet and Indian poet, or Indianness, and all these important aspects and dimensions, perceptions, that are necessary for you to understand. So you are not confined to study only one poem as just for the point of view of critical appreciation. I mean, you must be thorough with the text. That is also equally important. Now, Nissim Askell's dynamism as a poet, and why it is important, because see, it is commendable. Why it is commendable? When he tends to cover variety of subjects in his poem, and especially when we will study his poem Night of Scorpio, the Indianness in the poem, that is really striking, and that is equally praiseworthy. So the variety of subjects, when we talk about, and earlier also, I mean, the poems that we discussed when we were discussing Poet, Lover and Bird Watcher, at the time, enterprise, philosophy. But beside that, now the point here, the idea underlying is that he derives the theme from commonplace, and then universalizes, sometimes idealizes, and that's why his themes are very arresting. It attracts our attention, and you will have better understanding if you study his poem The Visitor and in India, because it is relevant to that. I mean, relevant to the present context also, and at the same time there is some connectivity in these poems. That's why at MA level, again I reiterate the importance of that. And see the kind of variety of theme, and his famous quotable line, particularly in the poem The Visitor. Now, what is the line? Because again, it is related to the poem Night of Scorpio. the ordinariness of most events. Yes, or this is the signifying it, the theme, especially when we talk about variety of subject, the theme signifying what? The ordinariness, the commonplace. I mean, themes he derives from commonplace. Now see, the very eye catching and arresting and very interesting topics, titles of his poems. And students, you must have idea about that. You must remember that island, and say the company I keep, and a poem. I mean, the poem. I mean, this is particular, very interesting poem when he composes poem, the very Indian poem in English. And this is the title of the poem, and a case study. And yeah, one poem, I am reminded of, title is Lawn, yes, Lawn, and which is concerned with spiritual growth of a human being. So, commonplace, they're taking theme from commonplace and then idealizing it. That's why, they are very interesting, and they are really commendable, and sometimes, or many times rather, source of inspiration for the people, for the readers, and for the students, and including everybody. I mean, even ourselves also. Now, see, a particular line I would like to point out when we would study, the poem Night of Scorpio. But before that, yes, these lines very important. You must have heard these lines are really. Now, for instance, this line from The Visitor, when we talk about Ezekiel's dynamism as a poet, when we talk about as an Indian poet, when we talk about as a modern poet, so you should have idea about his special bent of mind, his mindset, his psyche, his human consciousness, and see the connectivity between consciousness and subconscious levels. Now see this line, see, three times, see this, the theme, and this poem begins, it commences with this line: three times the crow has cawed and at the window. So, and then he another point that filling the room with voice and presence. Yes, and this filling the voice, presence, and sleepwalking on the air of thought, it is, yes, connected with the poem, because this poem, it was also published in the exact name, and the Night of Scorpio, it was also published in the same poetic collection. And so now this voice and presence, this is what exactly he's talking in this poem Night of Scorpio. Are you getting my point? And then another poem, for instance, when we talk about say Indianness, and say Indian setting and environment and all that, and both positivity and negativity in this context. So in India also, yes, students of ME final, you should also have idea about his another nice poem when you write answers in examination, and also for your better understanding. Yeah. Now in India, in which striking reality of Indian environment, this is what he tends to highlight all the time. And we have picture of Indian societal setup, and we have religious ethos, but beside that, very ordinary topics he has covered. And see, he honestly, do you remember when we discussed earlier that poetry, in which there must be intellectual freedom in that, and we must all the time, when you write in Poet Lover and Bird Watcher, when he talks about that, there will be no artificial mask when you write poem. So this will be the honesty when you want to write any poem. So it is prerequisite in that. Now, for instance, in India, for instance, always in the sun's eye, see, we have here scorching heat. So that kind of geographical aspect also he has covered in this. And then here among the beggars, or see the picture in India, in the Indian setting environment. And he also talks about the payments and sleepers and all these hutments, dwellers and slums. So the idea underlying is that the poet, in all these poems, when we talk about, and because when you write an examination, it is not suffice that you just cover some points in this poem. How, all these poems, they are interconnected. I mean, many times they are interconnected with each other. And especially when we talk in this India, in this poem, he talks about suffering the place. People, they have to do a lot of struggle because of poverty and hardships and struggles also. So this suffering, when he talks about the place and the times, yes, this is exactly here he wants to highlight in the poem. Which poem? Yes, the Night of the Scorpio. Now there are many important points that we must cover so far as question Nissim asks Dynamism as a poet and as an Indian poet. I mean, general estimate, and when we study deeply this poem. Now the points, for instance, dramatic effect, as I touched this point earlier also, because we have theme and characters also. Now who are these characters? Yes, the speaker, the poet himself is the speaker, and we have characters like peasants. So this kind of dramatic effect in the, and we have suspense and mystery, and see there are, yes, 1 to 9 scene also. You will be surprised to know, because you had studied at BA level, but see, now you must study at deeper level. At surface level, the story, that how the poets or the speaker's mother, she was stung by the Scorpio, and peasants, they had come to help her, and see this helping spirit they have, and she was surrounded by the people, villagers, and they were so concerned about that, and they discussed the reasons behind it. And then the poet, he discussed the kind of say the sin and redemption also. I mean, prenatal existence, so many aspects, dogmas and belief and creed. These people, they said, see the repetition of word, the people in general. But beside this is a story kind of narrative of the poem, the narrative of, yes, suffering. And she had to undergo the deep agony, and that this is what he had highlighted in the poem. And now we would also discuss the in detail the dramatic effect in the theme and characters. As theme, as we have variety of themes in this, and suffering, and how at the same time the pain, she has been suffering this pain and agony. But see the connectivity between the first line and the concluding line. Now the concluding line, which is very important. Why? What is the reason behind it? Because she is always concerned about her son, about her children. She says, thank God that the Scorpio picked on me and spared my children. So this is self-effacing love, heights of goodness, heights of sacrifice, and extreme extent of, yes, love. This is what I mean, this is really commendable and praiseworthy. But another important point is that narrative. So we have narrative of idealized motherhood and characteristic features. But this is the third point, that Indianness, that we will also discuss when we would study deeply this poem. Now, when we talk about Indianness, Indian setting, what is the reason behind? Now, countryside setting we have in this poem, Night of Scorpio. Countryside setting, the Scorpio, this is generally found in the villages, and the poet's mother, when she was stung, when the poet, the speaker, he was residing in a village. And see, we have the depiction of peasants also, the depiction of peasants and villagers, and yes, helping spirit. The mother, she was surrounded by the villagers, and they were so concerned. So these are certain points in Indian setting. I mean, on the one hand, we have see the depiction of peasants, villagers, and the reason behind it. And now, when they were discussing the reason, see, and then we have different images. And yes, the important here connotation that faith in religion and spiritualism. They chant God's name and 100 times. This is what the poet he has highlighted here, and in this Night of Scorpio, and see, yeah, the picture in which we have wall baked and see the kind of light, and this is what exactly he has highlighted several times. But now here I want to flash another significant point here. Yes, and it is reminiscent of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, when he talks about sum of evil, the balance between the two. And the poet here, when he talks about prenatal existence, and see, not directly, but they said, villagers, they were of the opinion, and see the significance of religiosity in human life. So this is also another point that here poet wants to highlight, and say the sum of evil, the balance in the life. I mean, prenatal existence. And say, you must do away with this misconception. Quite often it is discussed that, superstition, but not necessarily. It is, in a way, yes, belief, dogmas, and maybe based on some experiences. And say, the poet not directly, but we have inference, we have connotation that he wishes to here highlight the significance of holy scriptures also. So I mean, so many aspects are covered in this poem that we will discuss in much detail. And yes, mind you, when you study any poem, all the time, constantly, you must have in your mind that you are studying Nissim Ezekiel as an Indian poet, or the modern poet, or some dynamism in his poetry. And that will be, very, very significant for you, or that will be really enhance your understanding, your knowledge, when you study in proper way. Thank you. We'll continue.